Playing with toys is fun. It's the idea of going through the process, right? You know, sort of putting things into perspective by using them. And that's important. And so we have a lot of tools that we use to do that, right? Like we have our charts and our graphs and our different alphabets and our different numerological methods and all these different vocabularies, right? And one of the ways that we can access these vocabularies, these systems and so on is with the tarot, and I talk about that all the time here. How can we use this one tool to unlock all these different bodies of knowledge? Well, certainly, if you're going to consider the tarot as a means of doing that, then which deck you use has a lot to say. It's quite an important decision, right? I mean, if you're going to use a telescope to explore the sky, it's important you buy the right telescope, right? So that said, I thought it would be fun to talk about how to pick a tarot deck. You know, I mean, certainly there's a lot of ways that you can react to a deck when you first approach it. You know, how does it look? How do I feel? What kind of symbol system is it? What kind of, if any, framework does it follow, right? Is it a Golden Dawn system? Is it an elemental system? Is it a alchemical type deck? Or, you know, maybe even something that's unique or created by the artist or the source of the system behind the deck. And perhaps it was drawn by somebody else. And so you get this sort of merger of the two, right? I really believe that's the case with Thoth. I think it was a beautiful accident. You know, Crowley, when he was finally cajoled into doing the work by Frieda Harris, you know, provided the basis for the work with respect to the system and the, you know, the rigid numbering and so forth. But she certainly brought this level of vision that, you know, he never could have even imagined with respect to her understanding of geometry and how it was applied, right? And so you get this beautiful amalgamation of science and art that speaks the truth. And that's kind of the secret, right, when you're trying to pick a deck. It's that, if you remember, I've spoken often about maintaining the integrity of the art of tarot, and what does that mean? What it means at the end of the day is never forgetting what it's actually for, which is, yes, it's fun to look into the past and into the future and into the present, right? And get a sense of what's going on or what to expect, or, you know, perhaps a perspective on ourselves that's not readily obvious. But that's not really what it's for. It could be used for that. But what it's for is to wake you up, to tell the story of your own creation in such a way that as you explore the story, the ending comes to you because you've already lived it. And when that happens, there's no going back. You've woken up to the truth, right? And so the thing that it's designed to do, the goal of the work, is to draw that thunderclap, that moment. So, with that said, if that's really the purpose of the design, then it should be apparent when you look at the deck. And if you flip through the cards and you get a sense of the flow of the elements, like take out all the cups and look at them, take out all the discs and look at them, you'll see that story emerging, right? And if you see that emerging, you know you've got a good deck on your hands, something that you can trust that's going to help you along that path. And here's the thing. If the story is true, if the deck is designed in a way that it points to that one truth, then you will be able to use it to look at the past and the future. You will be able to look at a different perspective on yourself or a circumstance. Why? Because you know how the story ends. You've already lived it. And this is your story, right? And so when we're looking into the future, we're actually looking into our past from the perspective of ourself at the end of time. That's how this works. That's the actual method of approaching the tarot. And so how do we unlock that? Well, we realize the truth. And when we do, we're able to shift our lens to there. And when we do, truth. We're going to talk about how to do that tonight. But before we talk about that, we're going to talk about One example here, this is the Thoth Tarot. We're all familiar with it. It's probably one of the most iconic decks in the Western world. Second only probably to the, Pamela Coleman Smith. But that said, let's put it to the test. So I have here on the top the Two of Cups, right? And there's some beautiful imagery here, right? We have a lovely scene, colorful. There's some obvious symbolism here with respect to Venus and with respect to Cancer. So, okay, that's fine. It has to do with the decadent, right? We've talked about that before here on the channel. And then you have this flower on top pouring down the water into these two cups on it. It's really a very lovely image. But let's look, for instance, at the color. If we examine the top, we have in blue. On the bottom, we have this green, and in the middle is yellow. And that yellow is the color of communication, conversation. And here we have water, divine love. Okay. Now down here we have the same idea, only it's been split into two. So I see the story here very obviously, and those who know the channel here know that story. And I'll be telling it again, over and over in different ways. And you'll begin to recognize that story in things that reflect the truth. Now, the truth is accessible everywhere if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, but it's hard to discern, right? I've mentioned before that there is no truth in the light. The light shows you everything. And so it's oftentimes difficult to discern the truth from the lies. But if we have the strength to enter the darkness, we are forced to use something other than our eyes. And so we, out of a reaction, stop relying on the light around us and we shine our own light. And when we do that, a magical thing happens. Our inner light can only shine on the truth, it turns out. But we don't know that because we walk around all the time and it gets drowned out. And then when we emerge from that darkness, we are ourselves, shed of all that nonsense that stopped us from doing this work to begin with. And we have new eyes, right? So now we can see the truth. We can hear it. Your soul is always talking. Always. We just can't listen with the ears, right? So I'm going to say that this is a good deck. I think the goal that they set out to accomplish, they did. And I think that, we're all kind of better for it, because if you have the patience to work through it, then you're going to find the story in that. And isn't that what it's all about? Finding the story. What's interesting about that is the fact that we're writing it at the same time, right? Fun stuff. So, let's jump to the notes. So I promised a couple of people that tonight would be really silly, and I wasn't kidding. And for those that I've talked about who are going to be receiving a deck as part of that process of the shedding of the decks, that's the process I'm going to use when picking the deck for you, right? Does it speak that story? Does it tell the truth? Or am I stretching, right? Because if you're reading the deck and you have to stretch to find the symbolism, I don't know, you have to sort of maybe step back from it and approach it again and maybe consider, does it have a different dialect? Is it using an accent? I had that problem with Deviant Moon. Deviant Moon is such a gorgeous piece of art that it was hard for me to look at it as anything else. I was so enamored by the consistency of this world that Alex Valenza brings us into that I failed to recognize the symbolism, which I knew, obviously from decades of using the tarot. I saw it, obviously, I saw it. And his portrayal is quite succinct. But I was using the wrong lens, and and then I recognized, wait, it's just an accent, it's just a dialect, and then it became actually a very powerful deck for me. But so that said, if you find yourself stretching on a deck, step away from it and then approach it again and take a look. Okay, what lens am I using? Am I looking at the art or am I looking at the story? And this is just the accent of the person speaking it, right? And so give it another chance. But if you do find that you're just not getting there, it might just be that you're not connecting with the language. You're not connecting with the order it's portrayed, or maybe perhaps the symbols are not in a way that you think. There's many different type of thinkers, right? You hear me? See what I mean? You feeling that? And if you're not being spoken to in the way that you touch, then it's going to be a difficult communication. Have a lot of fun stuff that I want to show tonight. I want to kind of let the stream build up. I'm jumping on substantially earlier than usual. And so I thought what I might do is just pop on. If anyone jumps on and is interested in a reading or anything, we'll do some fun stuff in the beginning as the stream builds up. And when a couple of individuals pop in, we'll get into the fun stuff. Aleister Crowley spoke about the goal of the work being to attaining knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. And this is a very important sentence, not only to Thelemites, but to what we're trying to do here, because he really described soul talk. Conversation talk. Holy guardian angel, higher self, unconscious. These are all words that are incorrect, out of context. A feeble attempt to communicate something that can't be communicated, speaking the unspeakable. Like, how do you, right? So we point at it with signs. Luana, how you doing? I'm so glad you're here. You're going to have a blast. Tonight's going to be fun. I decided that I'm going full cheese, and so I'm warning everybody, and I am not kidding. It's going to be cheese. In fact, I've always prided myself, especially when speaking publicly, which I've done a fair bit of, to not crack. I don't laugh. I'm able to kind of stay stoic when I need to, but I'm warning you that's not going to happen tonight. I'm going to be cracking up all over the place, and I'm going to be blowing the character, and I'm going to be, the illusion will not be maintained. So I apologize for that, but we're going to have fun. And so I'm glad you're here, Luana, because you're one of the people that I wanted to be here for this. It's hysterical. I was just talking about Crowley, talking about the goal of the work being knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, this idea of knowing the true will and so forth. Well, a lot of people are having trouble going through that process, and they can't, for some reason, maybe understand it or understand what they're actually trying to do, or maybe they've done it and don't even realize that they've done it. I think a lot of you are going to fall under that category tonight. But so what I figured I would do instead is I have achieved knowledge and conversation. I have crossed the abyss, and I have seen the truth, and I'm here to return to give it to you. And so here's the best way to do that. I had a conversation with my holy guardian angel, and he's willing to come on for an interview. Okay? So how cool. He's going to come on and he's going to speak to us, and he's from the other side, and he's going to maybe have a message for us. We'll see. It's up to him. He can be a little cocky sometimes, but he promised he would be nice. So we'll see. So I'm going to let the stream build up a little bit, and then, try to pipe him in on the conversation here. So this way, you don't need a holy guardian angel. You can talk to mine. His nickname is Ardo, A-R-D-O. And I achieved conversation with him, I would say about 20 years ago. I went through a couple streams ago, a little brief recollection of that moment, and it was kind of cool. And, I've drawn him and stuff and whatever the case, and I tried communicating with him that first time that we met, but he wasn't really too talkative. He only said 2 words to me. But that was okay. Turned out it was the exact 2 words I needed to hear, and so now we're friends. We're buddies. And we're going to be talking about a couple other things tonight as well. There's a few ideas that I've touched on that I think I want to clarify. I mentioned that, and actually Eliphas Levi is I think, put it perfect. An imprisoned person with no other book than the tarot, if he knew how to use it, could in a few years acquire universal knowledge, right? Now, I've spoken about this as well with respect to the deck that I created being a distilled down version with the intent of just getting right to the heart of the work. But it can also be used to boldly, I've stated, unlock any human system of knowledge. And so what I'm going to be talking about tonight is 4D vector math and how that applies to tarot and what that's all about. And it's not what you're thinking. You won't need a calculator. What I'm going to speak about tonight with respect to 4D can be understood by a second grader. And so you'll be fine. It's not no equations. We're not going to be writing down any formulas. However, by the end of that, maybe 5-minute conversation, we'll understand 4D vector math, truly. And more importantly, why it's relevant to who you are. Okay, and that's going to be a really, really interesting talk. It's one of those things that once you get it, you can't unget it, and it changes you forever. All right. And so, when it comes down to if there's any physicists out there or mathematicians that approach this subject with respect to quantum mechanics or to the kind of bridge between the lower and the upper, right? Newtonian and quantum, you're going to understand the idea of the space of states, and that's kind of what we're going to be speaking about tonight, right? And so, and what that really is all about, the sort of the convenience of the variable, right? There's some truth in that. There's some truth. And then we're going to talk about the biggie. Last night I spoke about who's watching, right? Who's the observer? Tonight we're going to talk about who's speaking. I've said many times before, out of jest but not, the truth in secret, that this is the sound of your voice. This is your voice. Well, tonight I just figured, let's just get to the heart and prove it. So that's what I'm going to do. We're just going to do tonight's going to be a lot of truth told openly, all over the place, right? The lie told openly is when somebody pops in and needs a quick tarot reading, right? And what we're going to be doing is applying the truth without their knowledge. I'm going to be reading the cards the right way, but I'm going to be ignoring their question and telling them what they need to hear, and we'll see if they're satisfied with the answer. But that said, it's just an exercise that's really for the other people in the room who have been through these couple of streams and are walking this journey together with me, right? And all of us together are kind of going to step up to that door, and I'm going to stand there, and we're going to walk through it together. Okay. So, for those who maybe are late to the process or are jumping in the middle and don't know what we're talking about, they think they're just going to be getting a tarot reading, which is good because that is what they're getting. But they're getting it read the right way with the integrity in mind. Okay. That one truth. And then finally, there's a couple of things that I wanted to mention that I've said over and over, but I'm going to say the final way. There's many ways that you can speak the same truth. Basically kind of 4, right? Feel me, hear me, right? Knowing. And then there's another. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to speak the same thing the 4th way. And if you have been walking on this journey, this is it. Good stuff. So, let me see if Ardo wants to talk. I don't know. I mean, it might be time. I don't want him to get anxious and leave. So anybody out there, again, and if you're watching this after the fact, I understand that, it might have been fun if you had caught it live. I mean, it's always fun to speak to a holy guardian angel live on the internet, on a stream, in a chat. But if you happen to miss the opportunity, you can give me a call or a chat. Or a text message, Venmo, email. I'm on WhatsApp. All these different ways to just figure out a way to get a hold of me, and then I'll see if he wants to talk, and then we can get set something up for another live stream, and we can do a personal conversation between you and my holy guardian angel, if that's what you want to do. Okay, so you let me know. So let's see if he wants to talk. I don't know. Give me a sec here to see if he wants to maybe speak. Ardo, are you there? Do you want to speak? I don't know. Let's go. Let's see if he wants to talk. Hello. Ardo, are you there? I'm here. Hear me. I come from beyond the abyss to give you you. This is the sound of your soul. Okay, good. So I think he's ready to talk. Maybe later on as the stream builds up, we'll get some questions from this chat and see what are some questions that you would pose to your holy guardian angel if you could, and we'll have a proper interview, right? And so that's going to be fun. So, I know it's pure cheese, but the truth is that it might be a little more true by the end of this talk than you're expecting. Right? That funny, silly little thing kind of derived from this little segment I thought would be fun, and when I started the channel, and it just kind of, I don't know, it didn't really work out. It was the random act of wisdom, right? As I was speaking to people, I would pop in here and as a sort of a sidebar that was relevant but not, right? And I thought that would be a fun thing. But then I decided, you know what? Everybody's having so much trouble with this idea of the abyss and this idea of the conversation, and you know, and I thought, let me just, I don't know. Let's just bring them right to the edge of the abyss, and so we can talk to each other from beyond the veil. And then maybe it'll put it in perspective what we're trying to do here, right? How funny is that? And so that said, it's going to be hopefully a fun conversation, you know? I mean, if you think to yourself, like, if I could ask my real higher self, if I could ask this conduit between here and the ultimate infinite truth, what would I ask it? So, we did a couple things yesterday with respect to the Kabbalion, and we were looking at the Hermetic principles and how they might accidentally tie to the planetary majors, right? And there's these other majors too that we should think about, and I'm going to be slowly over the stream sort of looking at where do we see these others, like the three majors that represent the elements are a totally different story, and you know, it's kind of hard not to see that trinity quality of the air, fire, water. And it's a fun exercise to go through which one is which, you know, and the code is everywhere. If you consider like what colors are what, and you see where the blue and the yellow and the red appear in the top part, right, is that initial kind of trinity of those elements. This is a nice card from a Golden Dawn deck. I think this is the Robert Wang. But that said, so, you know, here we are on the bottom kind of thing, right? And so, and this is a good depiction, obviously, too, is that same idea of the, right, the 10th. So, those three on top, and the 7 we talked about, right? The 7, the planetary majors. But then there's the 12. And we've found the 12 in a lot of different places. The 12 disciples, the 12 signs, all these type things. And so we're going to be reviewing that and kind of going over the streams, like where are these other connections? And the total number is a biggie too, right? And so that's kind of an important part of that as well. It's like putting them all together. So to begin, let's just throw a couple cards real quick just to have fun and see maybe, and if anyone out there has any ideas on a question that we should ask the Holy Guardian Angel, let me know and we'll have a quick interview and then we'll move forward. I'm just going to shuffle these real quick, a quick little Quick little shuffle just to maybe reaffirm what our will is here and what we're trying to do in this circumstance. Right? Okay. Let's just take something out of the middle, I guess. What you have, all the princes represent the airy part, right? Which is the idea of mind and communication, and all of the discs represent the earthy part, right? And so the Prince of Disc is the communicator of physical manifested reality, the idea of the teller of the shape. Sort of the describer of the form. And another way to put that is to describe, to want to tell what you want to bring manifest, to vocalize your physical will, your bodily will. Which is not what you might think when you hear that word. This isn't really about base desire. That would be the wand. This is more about the things you want to make in the world. Like if you're a baker, this would be the idea of wanting to tell people about this new cookie recipe that you made and it tasted great and it came out perfect. This isn't intellectual though. This is brought into, so it's like the cookie after it's been baked. So when you see something like the Prince of, say, wand or sword, they're in a different state. Things haven't been physically brought into manifestation yet. But with the disc, the work got done and now you want to brag, right? The prince is like, oh, look what I have, look what I did. Or, here, have this. And of course, where did he get the disc from? Ultimately, it was formed through the union of him and the princess, right? It's the idea that the princess bestowed the element upon him because he won her in battle through her trials. And what are those trials? The signs and the deacons that are represented with it. And so what this is really talking about, if we go to the wheel, we can get some insight. And this is one of the tools that we use when we are interrogating the universe with the tarot. This is sort of the inner order playing with toys, right? And so if we look at the outer bands of the wheel here, where the queen, the knight, and the prince is, we're going to be looking for the Prince of Disc, which in this particular image is toward the top right. And it appears in Taurus. And you'll notice here, that his particular chariot is being pulled by a bull, right? That's not an accident. Okay. And so now you'll see that it's in Taurus. And if we look at the Prince of Disc, he starts actually about a 10-day period backward, where he appears in the period of the Four of Wand. Okay, let me just mark that for you to make that more clear. What we're looking at here is we're starting for the Prince of Disc here, and then he's ending over there, right? And so this is the period of time that the Prince of Disc enters and exits. Okay, and the Princess of Disc is the object of his desire that he wins the element through. So she bestows the element down into the Prince of Disc, which she then separates through, and through a conversation with his deacons, is able to pass that along into actual physical reality. The small cards are real. They're in this world, right? And so things prior to that aren't. The colored wheel that we see here is physically manifested. These are the actual planets that we look up at. However, they also represent the energies on a more subtle level. And so although they're real, they're sort of in between manifest. Remember, the planets formed first, and then space was born out of necessity. So they're kind of manifest, but kind of not. Everything inside of here is actually manifest. These cards represent our real day-to-day minutia, our moments, our physical creations or transformations. And that's the reality part, right? So if we consider that vocabulary when looking at this story of this Prince of Disc, what we are actually referring to is the fact that he is now ready to communicate these things that are made, and he's going to do that through the energy of the 4, 5, and 6. The 4 of Wand, the 5 of Disc, and the 6 of Disc. And those with the knowledge of the vocabulary of astrology could even just use the idea of the planets and signs. So we're talking about Venus and Aries. We're talking about Mercury and Taurus. And we're talking about the Moon in Taurus. And so by looking at these different correlations, we have this beautiful vocabulary that is almost like a font of poetry that we can reassemble into words that make sense in our hearts. Because don't forget, when we're interrogating divine mind, we do it with our heart, not our mind. And what a beautiful language it is, truly. And so that's the Prince of Disc. Yes, hello, thanks for coming in. I appreciate you popping in tonight. I don't know if you've had any trouble attaining knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel or your higher self, or what I like to call achieving soul talk. But if you are having trouble, we're going to wake that up tonight. And if you'd like, I had a conversation with my holy guardian angel and said, you know what, would you come on the live stream tonight and talk to people so they can just realize it's nothing to worry about and it's kind of easy? And he said yes. And so if you have any questions for my holy guardian angel, he's willing to talk to you tonight, and we're going to pop him in. Let's see if he's still available. Are you still there? I am here. Okay, good. So he's ready to talk, and so we can do that, okay? So anyone who wants to speak to my holy guardian angel tonight, you let me know. We're going to have some fun. In the meantime, the idea that we have approached a few times here is the idea that the soul is always talking, right? Always. Like there's never a moment that it's not. And yet we have this problem being able to hear it because it gets drowned out. And, you know, I want to reveal that that's kind of half true. I'm sorry. I know I've been saying it over and over and over, and now he's saying, wait a minute, it's half true? Yeah. I know. But I had to. And you'll understand why. Just like conversation is half true. Conversation. You know, it's the idea that the talking is always happening, and the listening is the part that we're responsible for, right? And so what we have to do is to use the ears to hear. I've mentioned that, and all these techniques and so on, but really it just gets to the heart of what we're trying to do here. We need to switch to thinking tonight, and so we're just going to throw everything in reverse. There seems to be some kind of value in doing that, throwing stuff in reverse when you approach this information, right? And so by doing that, we're going to just completely swap things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right now speak the truth openly, and then we're going to talk throughout the evening, and then I'm going to speak the truth openly again at the end. Identical words, but they're going to have a totally different meaning. And so here's the truth openly. Your higher self is always talking to you. And what does its voice sound like? I've said many times, and truthfully, I did not hyperbole, not symbolically, not dramatically. This is the sound of your voice. At least right now it is. Right now, your voice sounds like this. Later on, it's going to sound like your feet touching the ground and walking around the house. Opening the fridge, it's going to sound like the sound of a fridge opening. That's the sound of your voice. I've mentioned many times, you hear the sound of my voice entering your ears, you see the light in your room entering your eyes. Even if you close your eyes really hard, you still see light entering your eyes. You can't not see, you can't not hear. It's a constant stream of reception, right? And more importantly, the sound that's entering your ears, that's not you. That's something entering your space and you're processing it. And so you're not really the sound. You're the observer of the sound. You're the thing hearing, right? You're not the sight. You're the thing that's seeing. You're observing the thing that's being seen. You're not the smell. You're the observer of the scent, right? You're not the thinker. You're the observer of the thought. Thoughts are a product of the brain. They're not yours. They're as much yours as my voice is yours. And that's truth told openly. We are not the thinker. We're the observer of the thought, okay? Turns out that's half true. What is the voice of your soul? Well, it speaks in color. Look around. And seriously, it's not a rhetorical. Like, look around your room right now. That's your voice talking. In light. Listen to the room and my voice and the music on the stream, or the sound of your pets, or the sound of silence. That rushing. That smooth, soft static of nothing. That's your voice in sound. And now, the reason that we don't know that is because we're thinking about it. You can't. You have to think about that in your heart. So feel what I just said. You are not the observer. Sorry, I lied to you, and I did it on purpose. You're not the observer. You're the thing being observed. Look around. That's you. That's you screaming to yourself to be heard. Screaming in color. Screaming in light and sound. What does your voice sound like? Look around. That's your voice. That's your voice. Your voice is what you're seeing and feeling. This is your voice. Touch your cheek. Feel the difference in the temperature? Is it cold or warm to you? Either way, you are that heat. You're not the one that feels the heat. You're the heat. What do you sound like? You sound like light. You sound like vibration. You sound like music. What do you taste like? Like the buzz of current across your tongue. You're not the one that's thinking about what it tastes like. You're not. You're the taste. Where you get fooled. So consider that. Consider the fact that what we're actually talking about here is that when we want to hear the voice of our soul, when we want to hear our soul talk, when we want to converse with our holy guardian angel, when we want to know the truth, we just have to simply listen. That's it. And what are we listening to? Not with our ears. The only way to receive divine mind is in our hearts. The only way to receive divine love is in our mind. We receive love in our mind from there. Down here, it's not love, but we think it is. There's only one that's real. And you'll know it. And when you're examining your higher mind, you can't do it with your brain. Your brain is a lie on purpose. We are forced to interface with a reality that is far beyond our comprehension, and we get a small sliver through our senses to process it, to experience it, to take it in. And the brain is doing a lot of work to try to allow us to do that. And it's difficult to navigate through that while at the same time communicating with a higher place. It's kind of a fool's errand. Rather, recognize the truth, which is that the voice being spoken by yourself can only be heard by the heart. And so this whole process is pointless. If you're examining the information mentally, that's good, because it helps to build that vocabulary between the heart and the mind. But then eventually you have to let go of the information. It's not about that. The information isn't there to show you the answer. Answers don't work. Questions and answers are not opposites. They seem like it. Questions and answers. Are they opposite? Yeah, okay, they are. But they're actually one thing also, which means that there is another opposite, and that opposite is the truth. Okay, and that's what we're going for. We're not going for answers, which give you more questions. We're going for truth, which is the end of questions. It's the opposite of questions. And what is that truth? We never left. There was no descent. There's no tree. There's no 4 trees. There's no Sephiroth. There's no abyss. You never left Eden. You never descended. You never ate the apple. Okay, so that's the truth openly, and now you're like, okay, well, man, I'm on the verge. I almost got it. Wow, he was close. He was close to bringing me there. I was kind of feeling it, but I lost it. You know, you won't at the end. Because the next thing we're going to be talking about here is quantum mechanics. And I know, like I said, oh, crap, he's talking math. No. I won't even ring up my own calculator, don't worry. I'm not going to be writing any equations. I mentioned before that this can be understood by a second grader, and I meant it. What we're speaking about here is about higher dimensions. How do you picture higher dimensions? Well, there's people on the planet that do that for a living. They're called particle physicists. And what they look at is the smallest things possible to imagine. And when you get to that level in their math, the rules break. Gravity, magnetism, strong and weak. These things have a different definition down there, and things get a bit fuzzy. And so you have to look at things from a different perspective. And so they have this way that they train their brains to think about 4D. Could you imagine? I mean, we're so programmed into 3-dimensional reality that if I give you the concept of 2D, which is really just 3 dots, and connect the lines, right? So it's just a surface, like a little triangle. That's a 2D plane. You still imagine it floating in 3D space in your head. Like, we can't even just imagine 2D. We can reference 3D, but or 2 dimensions, but in a 3D space. We can't escape 3D as our mode of perception and communication bodily down here. We just can't. So there's techniques, though, that we can do to access what 4D looks like, what 2D looks like. And one of the ways we do that is abstractly. We do it with math. So we say, okay, well, if I want to describe a shape, I can give you some numbers, right? A 1, let's just, for the sake of it, call this 1, which means that this is going to be about 2, right? So then it describes a rectangle. It's 1 and 2, and we can describe all kinds of shapes that way. But now we're getting into 4D. Well, how do you do that? So, well, the same way they do with all their other math. If I wanted to figure out how big that thing was, I would take that and multiply it by that. Very simple. Okay, well, in 3D, it's the same thing, but I just do it with all the dimensions. With that one, and that one. And so now I can calculate the shape of a cube. Very simple, and how much area is in it. But now there's a whole nother level. What about 4D? Well, we can't see it. We can't know it. We can kind of pretend to know it in our heads, but really we're just seeing it floating in 3D space in our head. So what do? Well, we just ignore all that, and on paper we just write down a 4th variable. That's it. It's actually imaginary. Okay? It's an imaginary variable. I lied. I'm going to a diagram. Okay, and so the idea here is very, very simple. We're trying to talk about things that are so beyond us because we literally don't have the capacity to think that way. Like, our brains aren't even able to. So if I wanted to measure this square, and this is 1 inch, and this is 1 inch, I can easily just say, okay, well, length times width right? Is 1, fine. Now, if I turn this into a three-dimensional object, on the other hand, I could still do that same math. Nothing is stopping me from doing that same math on this cube. I just have to add that third dimension of that inch, right? Very basic. And so it would be length times width times depth. This is second grade, people. And now I want to look at and measure, because, you know, I'm like so done with 3D. Like 3D is so 1994. I want 4D thought. Well, how do you do that? Well, what you do is you very basically just add another imaginary number for the sake of convenience, right? So you would draw your little, whatever the case. There's a couple of different shapes that science is trying to, any way we can, to try to figure out what this thing looks like. So we have some symbols. This idea of like a hypercube where everything's kind of connected, and I'm not going to draw the real one, but look it up online. They're kind of beautiful, and it's sort of a cube inside of a cube. But forget that. All we do is just for convenience, we make up an imaginary number, right? And that imaginary number is just a convenient fourth variable, right? So we'll call it length, width, depth, and I don't know. I like this one, right? And what is that reference? It's just an imaginary number. I'm just throw it in there. So now we're doing 4D math. Just do the multiplication. That's it. And quantum physicists do the same thing with respect to vectors, right? And so what is a vector? It's a little expression that is made up of a bunch of other numbers. It's a fancy way to say it's one number that contains three components: an angle, a direction, this type of thing. And so, but all it is a number. And what they went is well, I want to do math about 4D, so let's just add a fourth variable. What if I wanted to do 5-dimensional math? Add a fifth variable. It's really that easy. A, B, C, D. A plus B plus C, or A times C, B times C gives you a cube. A times B times C gives you a cube. What is the area of the fourth dimensional version? Add another variable of D. Add another variable of E. You now have fifth dimensional. These are just convenient numbers that mathematicians use to do arithmetic on higher dimensions that are theoretical, imaginary. However, the knowledge that's derived from those equations is real and gives us real knowledge and gives us real tools. There's a truth to them. And in that truth, it becomes useful. And so that's all we're talking about here. So when Adam and Eve fell, they didn't fall. They didn't split into Adam and Eve. All they did, God, you did, was imagine another dimension, imagine another variable so that you could make a line. In the beginning, there was the one, right? And God said, I'm bored. And what happened was, invented, imaginary in the mind, the sword. But imaginary was just the invention of a new variable so that this zero-dimensional object could understand 1D, understand the perspective of other than itself, the descent, right? The beginning of the descent. And then this whole idea transpires as far as then saying, oh, well, you know what, if I look at 1D, 1D's pretty cool. I wonder what 2D looks like. Let me add another fake variable, just for convenience, right? This is the cup pouring out, right? We've talked about that before. Right? This is the vortex swapping the signs in the higher world as opposed to us, which is the wand, and then the cup upright, and then the sword. And Pentacle here. This is our tarot, but this is the higher tarot. And then, of course, throwing in the variable for convenience, and that is the only reason. It's just a convenient imaginary number by the higher self in order to think about 3D. Not create it, not manifest it. It's a thought experiment. It's a Gedanken. We never left. This is just the dream that you had in the beginning of thinking about, You were born at the beginning of time. You exist at the end of time right now. That's where you are right now. Why can we use the tools of the tarot so effectively to see the future? Because you already lived it, and so we're not seeing the future. We're recollecting the past using the tools that are designed to show us our story. We made the deck. This is all a dream, and the dream is not the New Age spiritual version. I mean, literally, physically, lucidly. This is what happened. Is what's happening. The failure is we are using the wrong lens. We're seeing it through the lens of our brain. We're seeing it through the lens of our ego. When you look around, that's your voice talking at you. What does your voice sound like? Look around. That's you talking. Swap the lens. You are not the observer. You're the thing being observed. And so all you did was imagine another variable for convenience so that you could play with the idea of one-dimensional. And then a line was born, two-dimensional, a surface, three-dimensional, a solid, fourth-dimensional, a solid moving and changing through time, and so on. And so these are just imaginary letters in an equation. And the more letters we add, the more dimensions. And, at the end of the day, what we're saying then is that all we are really looking at is that 0th dimension having a thought experiment. And so the conversation's always going on. There's never a moment when we're not talking. There's never a moment when we're not listening. The question is what we're listening to. Are we listening to the ego, or are we listening to this us screaming at us constantly? And here's the beauty. Once we have the vocabulary, we can hear it. Pick a random card from any deck at any time, and the truth will be revealed to you if the deck is true. The conversation, the union. The prince and the princess. We kind of just talked about this a moment ago. The union of the lion and the bird, right? The red lion and the white bird. There's an example here on my desk, actually, I think, which is a beautiful example, and it was a complete accident. Some people may recognize what this is. One day I might reveal it. It's my wand. See the bird? You should get the idea. And what is that union referring to? The idea that we've always been together. This is the lovers refers to the fall, right? And I've told that story before. The Adam and Eve story. The serpent. What is the serpent? It's God from below. And it's all just it's a story that, we look down through the abyss, and it's actually a mirror that reflects the opposite, and so we think we're looking at something else that we never actually left. There is no abyss to pass through. It's not real. The conversation is always happening. Attain conversation? No, well, you can't. You already have it. It's sort of just remembering that you already have it. It's not about attainment. It's about acceptance. Accept it. Receive it. Let yourself have it. Just let yourself have it. That's all. Just want to check my notes. I started doing notes a while back, and I never did notes, and I don't know, I missed it. All these years I should have been doing notes. Stop being the singer. Start listening to the song. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to step away for just a moment and heat up my coffee, and then we're going to come back and we're just going to go straight into toys. Toys, play mode. We're going to do gematria. We're going to look at another one of Solomon's seals, which is the one that allows us to command the spirits. See, before the other ones we talked about was protection, but now we're going to talk about the one that says, hey, do what I say, and here's my license, right? And so I'm going to show you that one. It's a lot of fun. It's from Jupiter. It's one that I hold very close to my heart. It's the third Pentacle of Jupiter, and we're going to be looking and reviewing the third Pentacle of Jupiter and the prayer associated with it. Because each one of these, it actually has a prayer from the original Hebrew that, we know when we've done the Gematria and the Horicon that there's a whole lot of stuff built into that. And so we're going to have that conversation in a moment. Okay, and so anyone that's interested in the fun stuff, we're going to be entering the inner order soon. And in the inner order is when we start talking about truth and secret. And that's where it gets fun. So just stick around and I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Alrighty. So let me top this off. I added a little. That's good stuff. So there's a couple things I'm going to go over tonight that are just meant to be playful, and really just meant to be like, don't take it too seriously. we'll never make it out alive. So, it comes out. The truth can be told many ways, and I think humor is one of the best ways to do that. There's a couple of people out there that really have inspired me to find these different languages to speak this truth in, to maybe touch each individual part of us so that we can wake up these different parts and come to it together. And humor is such a great way to do that. And so that's why I decided that I'd approach it that way. So that said, I thought it would be fun to look at the third pentacle of Jupiter, and I thought it'd be fun to look at doing some gematria. Anytime we've done gematria on the channel here, it's been pretty cool. We've bumped into a lot of really cool correspondences and some fun stuff, and we can look at maybe having that interview with the Holy Guardian Angel. Does anybody have any questions? It took a little bit of I had to kind of, make a little deal about some things to get him to come on, but he's willing to do it. So let's see, is he still there? Are you still there? Let's see, let me pop over to his little sanctum and see if he's willing to talk real quick. Are you there, Ardo? Do you want to talk? I'm here. Okay, good. So he's ready. So when you're ready, then he'll be ready. Great. So let's take a look here. What I'm going to be looking at here is there's a couple of books that thankfully we have out there that give us access to some information that it's starting to become more mainstream, I think, for a reason. I think that we're all in this state of seeking, and we're recognizing that the answers that we've been provided are exactly that, and that answers they're not really good for much other than forming questions, right? And that's not what we're here to do. What we're here to do is to find the truth. And so the way that we're going to do that is to read between the lines. What is it that we're actually accessing? What is it that we're actually trying to find? It turns out a lot of this work is really a matter of what is it that I'm seeking? What is the thing that I'm really looking for? Because that's what we're going to find, right? We're like meaning-making machines that just spits out a story that reinforces the thing that we want to believe, as opposed to what it is that we should be finding. And so one of the best ways to do that is to have your fun, but then step back from it and say, okay, well, what is it telling me? So I did the math on my name, and it means this, which is connected with that, and which is, also a word for this. Okay, that's fun. So now what? And I've mentioned many times here on the channel that I always like to leave you with a do. What should you do next? How do you use these tools? What does it actually give us access to if we apply it? The operative part of the work, right? And so that's what we're going to do. And so we've done all this fun stuff, and we've looked at all these books and the creepy circles and mages that sit in their magic circles and call demons, and right, this is my little John D. So right, so that, and call forth. So these are words. Like we've already learned what a deacon is. What is a deacon? It's a 10-degree period of time in the sky. And we use the sign and the planet to come up with a personality for that entity. Although when you enter the mind that way, it allows you to create a mythology of the creation of that person and that identity and that entity. And so what it does is it kind of forms in your mind in a way that you can access. That's all. It's a story specifically designed for you to remember your times tables, so that when it's time to do the multiplication, you just spit out the answer, right? Brianna, I'm so glad you're here. So let's take a look, right? So what is this? What are we looking at here? This is the one of the pentacles that I keep on my desk here when I do my work. Two of them are Mars, and this is the Jupiter, okay? This is the third pentacle of Jupiter. All right, you'll see some stuff on here related to maybe some names, right? Oh, that looks like the divine name we're always hearing about, that Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, the Jehovah. Oh, that's my girl. You hear Chloe barking? And here we have another name. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then all this interesting stuff. It looks like there's some Hebrew or something around the edges. And then on the back is this rotational 72-fold name, right? Let's see what's going on there. Hang on a sec for me. Maybe she's okay. Yeah, she can hear a lot better than we can. And so something's going on outside. And this is that divine name, that unspeakable name, which we'll talk about that another time. Okay? But that's an important part of this as well. But that said, so let's see what this is all about. What is this? Where did it come from? Where did these symbols come from? Was this designed by somebody recently that wanted to sell coins, or somebody that created something and decided that they wanted to share it with the world? No. This is derived from a very specific place, and we have a couple of resources that give us access to that in modern times through people who've done the work of the translations and so forth. And this is one example where Mathers, Crowley, and Cunibert got together and created this compendium of this information translated. And one of the portions of this book is the descriptions of the seals. Okay, and so you'll recognize perhaps some of these in these seals and their uses if you've done this kind of work. And if not, then this is just going to be a quick introduction. I'm not talking about any of the actual workings, more than just what this particular seal represents as a primer, a pointer of why these are used, right? And so these are the two that I have on my desk as well. Okay, and then we're going to look at this here as well, which is the one I'm referencing. Okay, and so now I'll just leave it here in the meantime. And let's talk about it here. The third Pentacle of Jupiter. This defendeth and protecteth those who invoke and cause spirits to come. When they appear, show unto them this pentacle, and immediately they will obey. I love it. Just the dramatic language, it's just, and you have to consider the motivation of the writer. Like, were they trying to elicit a spiritual response? Were they trying to be dramatic for the sake of the readers? Because, don't forget, a lot of the people who wrote these books, probably more times than not, had their little clutch that they shared this information with. That was their audience, right? And they wanted it to be, dramatic for the audience, so to speak. So that said, always loved the language. And now it goes through some additional descriptions here. This is the editor's note. In the upper left corner, now the pentacle itself is on the prior page here. Okay, and we're looking at figure 20. Okay, and that's here. Figure 20. So there's, ignore these. We're looking at this one here. In the upper left corner is the magical seal of Jupiter with the letters of the name Yud-He-Vav-He. Okay. Might be clearer in the book. What's this? In the others are the seal of the intelligence of Jupiter, and the names Adonai and Yud-He-Vav-He. Now you could mispronounce it and say Jehovah, Yahovah, pick a pronunciation, they're all wrong. Around it is the versicle from Psalms. This is beautiful. A Song of Degrees. Isn't that lovely? And this is 75 verse 1, but they that trust in Yud-He-Vav-He shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. That's the prayer that's going around the edge. Okay, so see there's a prayer going around the edge, starting with the shin at the top, going counterclockwise. Okay. And that's red that way. Okay. Now you can also take each one of these, just the first letter of each line, and have a new word, and that word will unlock the word of this device, and you'll see that right down there. Okay. We've talked about this. What that is right there is drawing around that rose cross to make that shape. Okay, so what we do is we enter the rose cross. Welcome to the inner order. So we're going to open up the rose cross. Okay, and what that allows us to do is to draw on these the petals on the inside, starting at the letter and then ending at the final, and this loops around and connecting the letters to make a symbol. All right. And when we're done with that process, you'll have a shape very similar to that. Okay, on the bottom left there. And what that symbol is the first letter of each word of the prayer spelled out as a shape. So that prayer can be spoken as that shape. Interesting, it looks like a serpent. And so that's the basic idea of what we're doing here. It's really a talisman that what we're attempting to do when we do this type of work. You can make one of these on your own using whatever symbols hold weight to you. And one day we're going to do that. We're going to go through the process. And as we add symbols, it becomes heavier. It becomes denser. It becomes, its entropy increases. And its energy increases. And it becomes a symbol for our mental state to latch onto. So just like with times tables, we've done it enough that it's ingrained in our thinking. It doesn't enter the forward part of our mind. We just use it, and that vocabulary becomes very powerful. And specifically, this is the word of obey me. So when you're going through the work, in order to protect yourself from the baddies from inside your circle, you speak that word. That's unspeakable, right? And so that's the gist. Missy, how's it going? Cool. The only thing more awesome than a fire is a huge fire. And so you get the gist of what we're doing here. What we're doing here is sort of just looking at all of these different correlations and how they apply together toward that one truth. Right? And the Goetia is an interesting way to do that, because what we have to remember is each entity that we call, quote unquote, is really just a little part of ourself. And what this does is give us permission to talk about it, give us permission to recognize the parts of us that we don't want to recognize, our shadow side, our the side that's maybe feels a little insecure, maybe the side that feels a little too big for its britches, right? There's a lot of parts of us that we don't want to explore but need to, because once we get them all in conversation, watch out world, it gives you the ability to really walk through anything and to accomplish anything. So Missy, you're late, and then, so that said, we need to kind of start the whole thing over. Sorry, guys. No, I'm kidding. But we just had a little fun at the beginning. And, you know, a lot of people have been having trouble communicating with their holy guardian angel. And so I had a conversation with mine, and he's willing to come on today and talk to everybody. And so let's see here. Is studying and working all at the same time. Wow. Heavy. That's a lot of listening. No kidding. So let's do this. I would say, if you had a question that you could ask directly to your holy guardian angel and it answer it, what would it be? Because I convinced him to come on tonight. So my holy guardian angel is present in the stream and is willing to speak to people. Let's see if he'll say hi to Maddie here. Hang on. You want to say hi to Maddie? Are you there? Ardo, do you want to talk? Milo Lista. Welcome to the stream. Awesome. Okay, good. So he's talking. Great. So whoever wants to speak to my holy guardian angel, just pop a question in the chat and we'll see what he has to say. It's going to be fun. I'm just warning you, though, his wisdom can be a bit not safe for work. Wow. It's really, that word was chosen intentionally, right? You know, who wrote Psalms? Psalms was written by Solomon. Don't forget that. And Solomon wrote for 3 people. The person that is reading it on the surface, the person that takes the first letter of each word and writes new words, and the person that takes each letter and puts a new word to each letter and then has an entire book from one psalm. So depending upon who's reading it, it's the word abide was very, very specifically chosen. And that's it's a beautiful prayer. Let's just read it one more time. Because it's really what we're here for. And again, what we're referring to is the 3rd pentacle, the 3rd seal of Jupiter, okay? And the prayer is Psalm 75, verse 1. A song of degrees. They that trust in Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. Great stuff. And so, yeah. Heavy. You are the voice, right? Who's talking right now? I keep saying that. Like, what is the voice of your soul? I keep mentioning, wow, your soul is always talking. It is, and it is. I mean, literally, there's never a moment. We're talking about attaining conversation. The conversation's always happening. Like, there's nothing to attain to. You just have to listen. But now here's the point. Who's listening? Because yesterday I spoke about who's, watching. Today it's who's speaking. And this is the cool part. Do you want to hear the voice of your soul right now? Look around. That's your soul talking in the language of light. That's you talking in the language of light. You hear my voice? That's you talking in the language of sound. That's your voice, not mine. This is you. We are not the observed or the observer. We're the thing being observed. We're not the one looking. I know I've said that to you over and over, and I lied on purpose. I've said many times, we're not the thinker, we're the observer of the thought. We're neither. If you want to hear your voice, open your eyes and look around. And hear it in your heart. You hear my dog barking on the truth? It's beautiful. You know what your voice sounds like? Mine. I wrote it down actually, and so I think I'll just review how I put this. You are the voice. You're the voice. Look around. That's you talking. What do you sound like? You sound like light. What do you feel like? You feel like warm. What do you smell like? You smell like sex. What do you taste like? Like the buzz of current, like a battery, but not as like less. No, you don't. You don't sound like light. You are light. You don't sound like sound. You are sound. You don't smell like sex. You are sex. You don't smell like or taste like. You are the buzz. You're not alive. You're life. You're not walking on the earth. You're part of the earth. You're the flower. You're the mountain. So we have to change the lens here. We're looking at the world, taking it in, thinking that we're the one listening. No, we're the one talking. Change the lens. Everybody, I'm talking to everybody, Missy. Let me go take a look at. I'm gonna go look at. I'm gonna go look at Chloe. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. She's fine. I don't know what she was barking at. I peeked outside, looked around. She just wanted to participate, and she's allowed. So, there's something I wanted to do tonight as part of the playtime. I got this book. Whenever I bump into anything, one of these like free book suppository things, or if I go to a yard sale, or if I go to a thrift store, I always look through the books, and you bump into some gems, right? If you aren't doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And this is one that I bumped into a couple years back that I just love. It's from, let me get the actual date. It's kind of relevant because it's an older book, but it's something 1973. The book is called Das Energy, and the author of the book is Paul Williams, right? Entwistle books from the 70s, right? Look, first of all, look at the art on the cover. It just sort of has this beautiful sort of fantasy vibe. It almost looks like a tarot card. That was one of the things that originally drew it to me, was that it had this vibe of like I don't know, just, it said something to me about the window and the stuff around the edge with the table. It just drew me in. And strange title. Now, I'm not sure if it's pronounced energy or energy. So, but if you want to be dramatic, Das Energy. Very fun stuff, right? And it turned out, after looking into it, it was quite controversial at the time. People looked at it as some kind of like anti-God statement or something, and it's quite the opposite, and you'll see why. Anybody who knows the story of the apple, right, of the sacred cow? Are there any Discordians in the room? And so that's a great story, right, about throwing in the apple and saying, this apple's for the most beautiful girl here, and everyone dove at it because they were the most beautiful, and it caused a big fight and ruined a wedding. Chaos. You want to really like gauge a room, throw something in there and say, this is for the best person here, and see who jumps for it. You want to know what God thinks about money? Look at who he gives it to. But here we go. I shall read to you from Das Energy. Now, just the first page, very small, very short. This little thing here, and then ending right here. That's it. Really, really something. And you tell me if it rings. Wow, love that. The art of noticing. Good stuff. Someone needs to write the book on the art of forgetting in order to remember. The only sin is self-hatred. It is an act of negation. Its opposite is faith. There is no such thing as evil. The concept of evil is a crutch. We will not heal until we toss away the crutch. To heal is to become healthier. To become healthier is to enjoy the freer flow of energy. It is the flow of energy that gets us high. To perceive something as evil is to imagine that that object, that person, is not part of me, that he's something else. To perceive evil is to attempt to deny that we are all alone, or all one. We have a myth that relates to this, the myth of God and Satan, the fallen angel, Lucifer, cast out of heaven for disobeying God. God who is good, Lucifer who is not good. Not God, evil. But who is God trying to kid? God is all. There's nothing that's not God. Lucifer is God. There's no distance. One cannot fall from grace. One can pretend, perhaps, that that brother over yonder is not me. He is something else. He is everything of myself that I cast out of myself. One can pretend, but not for long. There is no way to cast out any part of oneself. Systems of energy contain no garbage. There's no such thing as garbage. Dear God, the jig is up. Stop chasing your tail and embrace yourself. Lucifer returns to heaven. Let there be dancing in the streets. The only sin is self-hatred. We call it sin, but its true name is delusion. We have got to get ourselves back to the garden. Easily done. We are in the garden. Let us open our eyes. Come on. Not only that, but the music that I have randomly playing in the background hit perfect on that, so come on. But seriously, okay? And this is just like a random book that I got at a thrift store. I paid $1 for it. It was $12 in 1973. Something else, right? Did you recognize that story? It's crazy. Who is the serpent? God reflected through a mirror that shows us the opposite from below. It's an illusion. What are Adam and Eve? Adam and Eve are an invented imaginary variable that God stuck in for the convenience of having a thought experiment about something higher than zero dimension. He imagined a point, and then he imagined a line, and then he imagined a triangle, and then he imagined... Who? You did. This is your imagination. You were bored. And so you thought to yourself. Kind of like when we're bored. We sit around thinking about 4D. How do we do that? Well, we take length times width times height, and then we add a fourth digit. It's an imaginary number. We throw it in for convenience. It doesn't exist. But it lets us do 4D math. And then we get actual knowledge from that math, don't we? Same idea. You were sitting at the beginning of time bored. You felt like telling a story. So you invented a variable called 1. Truth. Open. You want to hear your voice? Look around. That's you talking. That's you talking in the language of light. You can't hear it in your ears, so stop trying. Hear it in your heart. You know it's true. What are you saying? We learn the vocabulary and then we know. Right? You're not the observer of the thought, and you're not the thinker. You are the thing being observed. You know, we get confused into thinking that we're the point of reception, and I've said it before, and we are, but that's not true. You know, attaining conversation, achieving soul talk is kind of half the truth, and it's a little pointing you in the wrong direction. The conversation's always happening. You don't have to tune in. You just have to listen. It's already playing. All around us from everywhere in every sense. You want to hear your voice in light? Open your eyes. You want to hear your voice in your ears? Go ahead. You're hearing it right now. This is your voice. At least for the time being, your voice sounds like me. And some music and, you know, whatever's happening in your space there. Because you're the space. You're the thing making the sounds, not the observer. Swap the lens. That's who you are. And so what does that mean about me? That's right, I'm you. So is that person that was mean to you. Yeah, that person that you hate, or you look up and and you see their face on the news, or you hear their name brought up, and it brings up all these stories that you tell. Yeah, they're you too. Jungian shadow work is hard because it forces us to recognize the worst in other people is a little piece that we could also have inside of us, and then we do, because they're us. If that works for you, yes, then sure. Yeah. Okay. God, well, I think need is the fallacy here. You can't need what you already have. That's the lesson. We don't need anything. It's actually not about listening. It's about hearing that it's already happening and knowing that you're the one talking. Who's talking? You are. Every observable phenomena in your life is the sound of your voice speaking to you. And now we just need to know the vocabulary so we can translate it, decode it, understand it. Let the conversation happen because it already is. Figuring out that God is all we need is something we're taught from the beginning, and that's sort of the problem, because some things can't be taught, they can only be learned. And so that is a pointer to the truth. It's not that God is all we need, it's that God is all we are. We never left heaven. There is no Eden. We never fell. There was no descent. There is no tree. There is no inner sanctum. There is no abyss. There is no korondon. You are the holy guardian angel. You are your higher self. We're looking at it opposite. You're looking out into the world through eyes, and you're observing those that sense, and you're thinking that you're the one looking at a world. No, you're the world, being fooled into thinking that we're the one looking. We're both at the same time. You were born at the beginning of time. You live at the end of time. Right now, you're there looking at yourself, waiting for yourself to catch up to that truth. And in the meantime, we're also here playing it out. That's why the tarot works to tell the future, because we've already lived it. We know the end. And why? We wrote it. We know how it ends. Of course we do. So when we look at the tarot, we're not looking at the future. We're recollecting the past. And so now it's time to forget, because all of it's just a thought experiment. There is no story. The story was just you, in the beginning of time, got bored and decided to tell a story. And how did you do that? How do we do 4D math? We take the cube, we know x times y times z gives us the area of the cube, and now, but what about a 4D cube? I don't know, add in a w. W, x, y, z. Now we have 4. Congratulations, you're doing 4D math. If you can multiply, you can do 4D math. It's just for convenience, we invent a variable. God invented the variable of 1. Who's God? You. You did. You did it. And look what happened. It's kind of awesome. So yeah, let's throw some cards. Who wants a reading? Hang on real quick. Are you there, Ardo?
I'm here.
Do you have a message for everybody?
I do.
Okay, great. What's your message?
I am you.
I know, it's pretty cheesy, but it's cheesy on purpose. Let's see. Okay. Justice. The 3 scales, the balance. 3, but all scales are 2. No, there's the one in the middle that holds it, right? There's the thing that's being balanced, and then the one in the middle that holds it. What does justice mean? Let's go to the Kabbalion. Don't you want to read the Book of Thoth? Nope. Great book. Let's go to the Kabbalion. And then we'll go to Thoth. Every cause has an effect. Every effect has a cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. Let's see what Crowley has to say on the subject. Now, Crowley calls it adjustment, not justice, right? So it's named differently, and it's also numbered differently to swap its strength. There's a Kabbalistic reason for that, and there's also an astrological reason that I've discussed, kind of touched on before, and I'm going to address it deeply in a future stream. This card in the old pack is called Justice. This word has none but a purely human and therefore relative sense, so it is not to be considered as one of the facts of nature. Nature is not just, according to any theological or ethical idea, but nature is exact. This card represents the sign of Libra, ruled by Venus, and Saturn is exalted. The equilibrium of all things is hereby symbolized. It is the final adjustment of the formula of Tetragrammaton, where the daughter, redeemed by her marriage with the son, is thereby set up on the throne by her mother. Thus, finally, she is awakens the eld of the All-Father. Okay. What it is, if you look, actually, is there's scales, alpha, omega. This is the 2 sides of the tree, and this is the middle pillar. And now the scale is balancing on consciousness, right? So your consciousness is balancing between your upper and lower self. And that is, there's nothing you can do to stop that. So the only thing we can do, which is actually the only thing that matters, is to just simply change our perspective. Because once we do that, we recognize that this is very similar to a gravitational lens in the sky, that if a galaxy happens to be behind this well of gravity, it bends up and looks like multiple, but there's just one. And if that galaxy were looking out, it would see its multiple versions and think that it's looking at different versions of itself in the opposite of that gravity well. And both of us are wrong. Each one of those little things is looking back at that, thinking that there's a separate, when it's really just the one being from a different perspective looking at itself. This is God talking to himself. This is God looking himself in the eyes. It's a real thing. And that's why the word God is so dangerous, because it separates us from the truth that it's us. Has always been us. We never left. What would you like me to read on? Yes. Any subject? Any question? Any direction that you want to take that, and we'll see where it goes. Let's do some gematria on the name while you're thinking. Yud. Hey. Samak. Yes. That's a 12. Which is really good. Which is a 3. But you get the idea. It's also the reason that you see, let's just talk about that for a minute, because it reduced down, right, to a 3. And so a 3 being Gimel. And that's just a letter, you know. But what it does represent, though, which is really beautiful, if I have her toward the top, let's see, is you'll see a very weird symbol for this card that's supposed to represent water, which is the High Priestess. On the bottom of that card is a strange addition of an animal that maybe is not necessarily so intuitive when you first see it. Like, what is this thing doing on her card? And she's a water symbol. And it'll become clear in a moment when I find her. I've mentioned this card before, that I could stare at it for days, and I have weeks of my life, because of the color on that top there. This reddish in the center, and then it's a rainbow, but it's mostly green blue with this tiny tinge of red, but it's mostly green blue, and I could stare at that for just. But then suddenly there's this camel. Like, what's with the camel? Like, what does a camel have to do with the moon or water or any of these things? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, like, why a camel? You know? And if we look at the chart here on the left-hand side, we'll see that the High Priestess is Gimel. And the moon. And now, you know, I've always sort of looked at it this way, is that one of the things that the camel can do is obviously walk through the desert, but another thing it can do is survive, because it's essentially a vessel for water. And so it's a beautiful interpretation of what the priestess actually is. Right, the vessel for water. General, cool. General works too. Let's do this. I'm thinking if I want to use the Crowley or the DuQuette. Let's use Crowley, and then we'll do DuQuette after. Knight of Sword, rushing down. Divine Mind descends onto the profane heart. This is the card of that Divine Mind descending. All right, this is the Knight. It's the fiery part, right? The Knights, or the Kings, all represent fire. Now this is the Thoth Knight, not the Rider-Waite Knight. So these represent the King and the Rider-Waite. And they're the fiery part of air. So this is the will being communicated down. That's why he's going down from above. Notice that, and it might not be so obvious on the stream here, these clouds aren't white. They have a yellowish, greenish tinge. So he's coming from the blue into, and notice he's green. Maybe Ardo can tell us about that. Green. Right, okay, yes, he'll talk about that later. But you get the idea, right? Wait a minute, who's that? Do you guys see that? Anyway. Divine Mind into the profane heart. Right? So this is that. You know, I spoke before about, you know, which ones of the cards in the deck represent which ones of the courts, and so this is an example of that, right? Obviously, the Knight of Swords is this particular card, which is the sword of bestowal. This is the sword of bestowal. All right, and so let's find the sword of bestowal. And let me pull out the, there you go. Okay. What's this here? Okay. This is the sword of divine mind depositing into our hearts. This is that card before it, like it's on its trip down. Right. So you get the idea here. And so we know exactly what this card represents now. Like anytime we see this card, we're going to know what it talks about. And so what's it talking about? It's talking about the idea of hearing the answers in your heart, not your mind. And that it's actually literally always talking. Like it's always. But now let's take that a step further then. I mean, you know. Great, but what does it mean? Well, it means exactly that, you know. Well, let's break it out a little further then. What is it trying to say? Are you either trying to take credit for something that's not yours, or is somebody trying to take credit for something that you did? It was your idea. You shared it. You chose to. The problem there is, though, that now you have the problem of having to, since you're connected with it to a certain degree, are going to be defined by their ideas about your idea. And so now when people think about the idea that they know came from you, they're taking the other person's perspective, and that's causing tension with you. Like, no, that's not what I meant. That's what they think I meant. It's like somebody else trying to tell your story and they're getting it wrong, and you have to sit back and listen to it. We all know that, right? We've been through that in our lives. And so what we can do is to sort of take agency back by recognizing that the thing that we were trying to communicate to begin with, we might have even gotten kind of maybe wrong in our own hearts. And it allows us to look at it from a different perspective, because when we're trying to communicate back up, the math's different, right? We hear in our hearts, but we speak into its heart. We feel in our mind. And so we can't speak to people's minds. Talking to somebody's mind is a conflict that you may win. Sometimes you're going to win that battle. Sometimes you're going to lose it. But most often communication doesn't happen because they're just processing it with their own vocabulary, their own agenda, and listening isn't actually happening. They're not in a state of listening. They're in a state of taking your words and justifying their world. But when you communicate to somebody's heart instead of their mind, that there is no shield, right? It's not like you're not having to butt up against their ego and convince it of anything. If the truth is present, it will ring in their heart. If the truth is not present, it won't. So you're not convincing them of anything. And so that's how you communicate properly with somebody who's hurt you or taken something from you. Don't talk to their mind, talk to their heart. And when you do, they'll hear it. You can't not. Can you turn off your ears? Try. So speak to the right part of them, and it's automatic. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? And these are also swords, so remember that. Each one of these is a mental state, a mental activity, a thought. Whose is it, yours or theirs, and so forth. Right, communication's